Good morning. Great to see you all. Nice surprise in the back there. Good seeing you guys. We've been talking this year about this cycle of loving your neighbors, which is the second greatest command, to love your neighbors as yourself, and then getting them to love God, to fall in love with God, which is the greatest commandment, and then moving those people to serving others, because if we hold our faith to ourselves, James says it's useless. We've got to get in the lives of other people and serve other people, and that includes all of us. Our theme this year is God first. Our theme verse is Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 7. You shall teach them diligently. There are two mics on because we're getting a lot of feedback. You shall teach them diligently to your children and shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise. This quarter, the final quarter, we're talking about God and others. How do we connect God and others? It's kind of an age-old question, and I think if you look around and you see what's happening culturally within the church, a lot of people are really struggling. I've talked about this a lot. Even mega churches that once boasted large numbers are in decline. The church generally seems like it's in decline. A lot of smaller churches, ever since COVID, we're in the post-COVID era, they're closing their doors routinely. But at the same time, kind of paradoxically, there's another trend that's taken place, and that's where people are becoming, quote-unquote, lay ministers, people with very little to no training, but people who love their Bible and they love their God, and they're preaching and they're starting house churches. Charles just talked about this explosion of house churches that were in the first century. And so we were talking about the 7 churches in Asia, and these were not 7 congregations. These were 7 very large congregations that were made up of probably thousands and thousands of very small house churches. A lot of those house churches were smaller than this group that meets here, and significantly smaller. And yet the church was large, it was powerful, and I think we're seeing this cultural shift away from institutionalized religion, so to speak, and to a more intimate atmosphere where people are connected both to God and to each other. And I think that's actually a positive change. Have you ever seen a family somewhere that just behaved very badly? Maybe you were out in public, you went somewhere, maybe it was a store, maybe it was to a ball game, but you saw a family that behaved very badly. We've probably all witnessed that, right? DP banging on the glass at hockey games. Yeah, I don't know. Trouble. I was watching a short video, I think it was yesterday or the day before, but it was this bride who was giving her vows, and she wrote her vows, and she got to a part where she told her husband, in spite of your flaws, I still love you, and I think it only makes you a better person because you know how to work through those flaws and to be an excellent man and an excellent future spouse to me, like the way that you treat me. So she said that, and the groom's mom, who was sitting up front, shouts out, "Don't you dare say my son has flaws. I paid for your dress," and just caused this big scene. And you could see the bride kind of, at first she kind of shrunk down, and then she's like, you know what, this is my wedding. And so she said, you are not going to ruin my wedding today. And it like turned into this big brawl, and everybody was telling this woman to just pipe down and be quiet. And they're like, this day is not about you. And so even if you feel this way, talk to her afterwards, like, you know. And so it went on, and eventually she was escorted out. She wouldn't let it go. She kept talking about money, and it just, you know, and now that's on the internet, and, it's probably there forever, and it doesn't really make her look very good, does it? We've all seen families that behave badly, but have we seen families that behave well? I think we all have. I think we've all experienced families that you look at them and you like start to tear up and you're like, I want to adopt them. I want them to be my family. We've all seen it, right? And we've all been really warmed by families that behave well. And we've seen families, we've seen them in restaurants, we've seen them other places where you just you can't help but to watch and say, you know, those parents are doing something right. And the kids are so respectful, and the kids they're funny, they're respectful, they're kind, and the family, the way they interact with each other, it's very heartwarming. And the question, to take that a little bit further, have we seen church families that behave badly? I think probably all of us who've been alive enough have witnessed or even experienced church families that have behaved really poorly. And it's not the kind of church family that you want to run to and be like, man, I can't wait to join this dysfunctional family. But then the other question is, have you seen church families that have behaved well? Where you do say, I want to be a part of that family. I want to be adopted into that family, and they just know how to treat each other well. They know how to respect each other, and they know how to treat each other well. That's what we're talking about today. And the text in 1 Timothy is where Paul is writing a young minister, Timothy, who's been on the campaign trail. He's been on the missionary trail with Paul. Paul mentored Timothy from a young age. And now Timothy's on his own, and Paul's been separated from him for a while, and he writes the young Timothy, and he's given him all kinds of kind of like fatherly advice on how to live, how to behave, and how to keep doing what he's doing. It's a letter of encouragement. It really is. And so Paul talks about the qualifications or the qualities of overseers and deacons. And then right immediately after, he says this. He says to Timothy, I hope to come to you soon, but I'm writing these things to you so that if I delay, you may know how one ought to behave in the household of God. It's a pretty potent, pretty powerful statement. I want you to know how to behave in the household of God, which is the church of the living God, a pillar and buttress of the truth. That's a powerful statement. The church of God, God's church, the church of the living God, it's a pillar and it's a buttress of truth. And so I want to talk to you about how to behave well. I want you to know how one ought to behave in the household of God. And then he goes on, he says, great indeed, we confess, is the mystery of godliness. A mystery is kind of a secret that's been hidden, but now it's revealed. So there's this mystery of godliness, and here's what he confesses. He was manifested in the flesh, vindicated by the Spirit, seen by angels, proclaimed among the nations, believed on in the world, and taken up in glory. He's describing the bride of the very church that he says is a pillar and a buttress. That if you behave well, you become a place, a safe haven where people can learn about Jesus Christ. You become a place where you behave well, people want to be adopted into that family, and they want to know who God is. And you're going to become the pillar and the buttress of truth within your community and even beyond. You're going to teach people who Jesus Christ is. You're going to tell people about the Word of God. And he goes right on to say, the very next section, but some are going to depart from the faith. And I think what he's telling Timothy is, don't get caught up in chasing people down, and somebody goes this way and somebody goes that way, and you just become so distracted trying to hunt people down. And this is not a case of, the one sheep who goes astray. This is a case of people being defiant and smearing their good name and behaving very badly. And so Paul's telling Timothy, this is going to happen. I want to teach you how to behave well, how to be the church of Christ that's the buttress of truth and this pillar of truth and godliness, but know that some people are going to leave. It's not your good behavior alone that's going to draw people and keep people, but it's being remaining and being rooted in the Word of Christ, keeping your doctrine straight, not getting distracted and not going down all these rabbit trails and not getting into all these useless, senseless fights. So he's letting Timothy know people are going to leave, some people. Then he goes on later on in chapter 4 and he says this, command and teach these things. He's talking about all the truth, and previously he told him don't get caught up in these silly myths, don't get caught up in all these weird arguments. Just don't do it. But command and teach these things. Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, in purity. Almost as if Timothy is this father figure within this family of God that is the church. And I don't think he's saying that because he has some kind of special authority or because he's saying that, you're the minister and, you need to do these. I think Paul would say this to all the Christians. Set an example to one another. In your speech, in your conduct, in your love, in your faith, in your purity. Until I come, devote yourself to the public reading of Scripture, to exhortation, to teaching. Do not neglect the gift you have, which was given you by prophecy when the council of elders laid their hands on you. Practice these things. Immerse yourself in them, so that all may see your progress. You remember when Jesus said, nobody puts their lamp under the stand. They put it on top of the stand so that the whole room can be illuminated. And Jesus, in context, is talking about Christians living out their faith so that others can see, so that others can see what good behavior should be modeled like. He says, keep a close watch on yourself and on your teaching. Persist in this. For by so doing, you will save both yourself and your hearers. It's not about this selfish, self-righteous Christianity where we say, well, I want to go to heaven. I'm not really going to worry about other people. I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to focus on, whatever. We have all these weird cliches. Like, I want to know what the church can offer me. I want to get my cup filled. We have all these cliches that are so selfish and so self-centered. And Paul's saying, don't be like that. You practice self-discipline. And you stick to right doctrine, where you're immersed in scriptures and you know God and you love God and you model good behavior, so that by doing this you will save both yourself and your hearers. You become an example to other people. That's how we connect God and others. I asked you the question earlier, do you know of churches that have behaved badly? And I want to read you a post because this is important. This is relevant. This is not theoretical. This is not, this is not me speaking from a place of, I'm just trying to tell you what to do, and, then we kind of go on and live our own lives. This is real life stuff. This is a friend of mine who just posted this as we were sitting here this morning. We were literally sitting here this morning. This was at 9:30 this morning. I want to read her post on social media. She says, it's 9:30 on Sunday morning, and I'm resting. For most of my life, Sundays were the most exhausting day of my week. I witnessed and experienced spiritual abuse in most of the churches I attended, long before I knew what spiritual abuse was. It has been 3.5 years since I left corporate religion, and my relationship with Jesus is sweeter than ever. This recorded the why I no longer feel safe in church. If you find yourself in the boat, the series may encourage you. Doesn't that break your heart? That her relationship with Jesus, and she's not exaggerating, I know her well. I think she has a fantastic relationship with Jesus, but what's missing is the church component, because people behaved badly. They did the opposite of what Paul's describing to Timothy. They didn't set an example of good behavior. They didn't treat each other well. Instead, they used and they abused people. And they turned her so off from corporate worship, worshiping together with brothers and sisters, that she can't even call them brothers and sisters anymore. And I don't want you to think that people like my friend who leave the church are bitter towards the church, and they're like, well, the heck with them, and I'm just going to walk away. When they walk away, it is the most hurtful, painful decision and experience that they will ever experience in their life. I did a quick trip Friday to Cincinnati. I left at 3 in the morning and got back at 8 at night. I went to be an emergency speaker, filling in for one of my friends who was scheduled for a long time to speak at an event on abuse. And he had some health issues, and so I was called. I was the second-hand person, which I'm okay with. But I went down there, and it was the speakers were Krista Brown, who wrote the foreword to my book. She is absolutely fantastic. And then another reporter who's really well known, and Sarah Stankorb, who just wrote a book herself on abuse in the church. And they were sitting doing kind of a Q&A back and forth with each other. And it was really fascinating because, fascinating in a bad way, but they were talking about this idea of spiritual abuse and how so many people have left the church. And they both had their own experiences of heartache. And Sarah said something that I've heard 100 times, probably way more than that, probably hundreds of times, where she said, the one thing that I hear routinely from people who've been badly hurt by the church is that the church's response to the abuse was far worse than the actual abuse. And we're talking about severe levels of abuse. Jen works a lot with abuse victims, and the stories you hear are absolutely shattering to your soul. Absolutely shattering. To where you can't imagine anything worse, but yet almost universally, every single person says the church's response was much worse than what I endured at the hands of my abuser. And I think it goes back to what Timothy says. The church is supposed to be this pillar of truth. And because it's a pillar of truth, you better conduct yourself in a way that's worthy of Jesus Christ. You need to set an example for people. You need to practice these things, immerse yourself in them so that everybody can see your progress. We better be making progress in the right direction. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be setbacks. That doesn't mean that some of us are going to fall off the wagon, so to speak, that we're going to get, as Paul says in Galatians 6:1, caught up in sin. And then he says to the rest of you, restore that person gently. People are going to struggle. People are going to struggle. That's life. That's a way of life. But we've got to model progress and what it looks like for the Church of Jesus Christ to behave well. And when we do that and combine that with reading the Scriptures publicly, pointing people to the Scriptures, pointing people to Jesus Christ, pointing people to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, when we combine those two things, God does and God will bless that no matter the size of your congregation. We see this in the Scriptures. We see it in the first century. And quite frankly, I think we're seeing it now. I think we're seeing this movement of small, they call them micro churches. There is a movement, and I'm telling you, it is spreading like wildfire, even right here in our own country. I've heard people recently say, man, we are so doomed. Look at Christianity in the United States. It's pretty much dissolved. No, it hasn't. Don't believe those lies. Get into the lives of your neighbors, love them, show them who God is, invite them into your own little world, invite them into your home, and model good behavior. I promise you won't be disappointed, because if you are, that means that God is disappointing you. And I don't think that happens. God is good God. God is blessing us. God is blessing this nation. God is blessing other nations around the world. And God will reward your persistent and faithfulness to Him. If there's anybody this morning who's not taken that step to put Christ on baptism, or if you have prayer needs, we'd invite you to come up. We're all going to stand and sing this song together.